हमने चाही वही खुशी पहले यूं न थी मुझसे बेरुखी पहले।
Good evening. Welcome, friends, to Cloud Playhouse. We appreciate you spending your evening with us today. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know that the subject matter is mature, so please use your parental discretion if you have young kids watching along with you. Most of you today, I hope, are watching from the safety and comfort of your homes. But there are many right here in the Bay Area and all across the world for whom home is not a haven. It is not a safe place. It is full of dangers and threats. And the threat is quadrupled when we cannot go outside, maybe because of the wildfires, and of course the Mahamari, the pandemic COVID-19, when we are all stuck inside the house. My sincere thanks to all the first responders, the social workers who respond to all crises, domestic violence included, and help those in need. There will be a panel discussion at the end of this 20-minute presentation. So let us watch No Makeup, written by Dr. Sukanya Chakrabarti and presented by Cloud Playhouse. I will see you on the other side.
Let's get back to the project, huh?
What about the Malhotra versus Malhotra case?
Time is it? Huh? Hey Bhagavan, it's time for my lunch. Don't know if she's cooked lunch yet.
Yeah, Vivek, please give me an update once the database guys get back to us, okay?
Oh, Kavita, no one here seems to care about anything. No one hears me. Huh? But my doctor has asked me to keep a strict schedule regarding meals. And no one cares about that. उसकी तो कोई परवाह ही नहीं. मैं जीऊं या मरूं.
Ma, please.
Okay, Kavita. Talk to you later. Bye. Is lunch ready?
Yeah, Ma, there must be food in the kitchen. Rohini will serve you once she's done with her call.
Calls and calls. All day. Just sitting in front of the computer and calling. Huh? What happens to the family? Who takes care of the family?
Varun, can you please give Amma her lunch? I'm on a call.
I'm also working, Rohini.
But you're not on a call now.
I also have things to get done. I have meetings and projects just the same as you.
All right. Guys, if you look at the second column on the third row, that has the prenuptial clause that I was referring to. Just give me 30 seconds and I'm going to be right back.
Why can't you give some lunch to your own mother? You just have to heat it up and give it to her.
Okay. I can take it on my own. You don't have to worry about it. I'll be here today, gone tomorrow.
Ma, can you please stop?
Amma, why don't you have your lunch? It's on the counter. The food will become cold again.
This is ridiculous. I'm heading to my office. You know I have a promotion due and you guys will... I'm heading to the office.
Oh, wait, don't leave like this, Babu. Have lunch. Huh? I can warm up some fish. How about if I make some tiffin for you?
Ma, please.
Jai Ganesh, Jai Ganesh, Jai Ganesh, Pahima. Jai Ganesh, Jai Ganesh, Jai Ganesh, Rakha.
Amma, can
Jai
you please
Ganesh.
do your puja a little later? Why don't you have your lunch now? It'll become cold again.
The only thing that gives me comfort, and I can't even do that. Siddhi Data Ganesh, remove all obstacles for this family.
Please, Ma, I told you last night I have an important meeting today.
What can be more important than Bhagwan? This is why there is so much disharmony in this family. No one chants the Ganesh Sutra. No one has time for God all day long on calls. No time to cook, no time to clean, no time to serve food to elders.
Rohini, where the hell is my underwear? Where do you keep these things? Things just seem to disappear from this house. How many times have I told you not to touch my things? But do you listen? No, you just do exactly as you please.
All right, guys, just give me 30 seconds. I'm going to dial back in a bit. I'm having some internet issues.
And Rohini, what about my shirt? When were you going to iron that? Rohini! Rohini!
Arun,
Hello? Hello?
Hi, this is Rohini.
I'm sorry, you must be busy. I was just wondering if you are.
Parking, I'll be right there.
Sorry, I understand. No problem. Thank you.
Hi, Gitanjali. Gosh, it's so lovely to see you again. I'm sorry that I had to keep you waiting. I just had so many back-to-back meetings today.
Thank you, Rohini, for coming to meet me. I could have gone to your place.
Oh no, this is much better. This way I get to get out of the house at least.
Okay, I know I shouldn't be wasting too much of your time. You must be busy.
Would you like to get a drink? Shall we order a bottle of wine?
No, ma'am, it's all right. I don't drink. But please, you continue.
All right. So, tell me, how have you been? And since the party, I mean, it was so nice to see you there, and I had such a lovely time speaking to your husband. I didn't know that he was into literature, poetry, and philosophy. You know, these days it's so rare to find men who are cultured and multifaceted, especially in the Bay Area Desi communities. You only meet boring techies who know nothing other than software.
Actually, I wanted to meet with you because I have to ask you for some advice regarding him.
Regarding whom?
My husband.
You mean Gaurav?
Yes.
Okay. What kind of advice?
So I'm currently on H4 visa, which is a dependent spouse visa. And
Let me stop you right there. I just want to clarify that I am not an immigration attorney.
yes, I know.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I mean, I didn't want this to be known in the friend circle, but I just don't know too many people here. I didn't even know whom to contact. Somehow, when I met you at the party the other day, I really connected with you. I mean, I felt somewhere I know you, or rather, you know me. And when you mentioned you're a divorce lawyer, I thought, I'm sorry, I know you're busy.
First, I will ask you not to apologize so much. What are you apologetic for? And of course, I'm happy to help you. It's just that it's a little bit of a shock for me, and I'll have to take some time to get used to it. Are you absolutely sure you want to go down this route? Oh, I didn't know.
Actually, I don't know. I mean, I just thought I'd ask you, when do your clients know that they can't make a marriage work?
Well, it depends. How long have you been married?
We've been married for 7 years. And initially, I really felt like it was my responsibility to make the marriage work. Now I don't know.
What do you mean?
These episodes, they come in waves. Sometimes he just gets so violent. His face changes. I can't even recognize him then. He just morphs into this really ugly man, a beast. And the more I retreat, the more violent he gets. But every time, without fail, he calms down after a while and apologizes. I mean, he sounds quite sincere and sorry. Gitu, I'm so sorry. I won't do this again. Please understand. Maybe that's why I've been in this marriage for so long. Because I wanted to believe him.
When when did he last
As I said, always in waves. And maybe because of COVID, he has this tremendous job pressure. And I understand how people are losing jobs these days. Just staying at home for so long also has its own effects. And our daughter, she's only 2 years old. And last night, every time he hit me, Gia just started to cry. She clung onto me so tightly that I thought she'd get hurt if I stayed in that house any longer.
Does he know you're here?
He thinks I'm out to get groceries.
Was it always troubled? Did you know him before your marriage?
I did not. Ours was an arranged marriage. Everyone thought he was so polite and charming. And once or twice, even when I tried to speak to my family, they would say I must have done something to provoke him. So I stopped saying anything at all. And he too would apologize after an episode, and I would just let it go, thinking he needs some love.
What he needs is a legal notice.
So I don't know how to do this.
Can you tell me a little bit about your job situation?
I got my medical degree in India, but to practice here is just a whole...
Doctor?
I have an MBBS degree from India, but I can't practice here without a residency. I've been trying to take some exams, but he won't give me any time to prepare. He doesn't help me with the housework. Then I have to take care of Gia completely on my own. And he has all these demands of fresh cooked meals every day. When I ask him to get some takeout food, he screams at me saying that I'm only thinking of ways to spend his money and that I don't make any money of my own.
Listen, this is something that I ask all my clients before I take up a case. So I just want to be sure. Are you absolutely certain that there is no way to renew or make up this relationship? If this is final, then I need you to make a formal appointment with me. I can talk to you when you're better prepared with all your documents.
I can't forget that look on Gia's face last night. So yes, I am certain. And the reason I wanted to speak with you now is that I think I won't be able to pay you the full legal fee right now, but I can pay you some amount.
Sure, I understand.
Also, he's hidden all my documents. I don't have access to them.
So that is a little more serious. I will need to make a longer appointment with you. We can even do it over Zoom.
Okay, but I can only call you when he's not at home, and he's at home all the time now.
You can text me.
Sorry.
Again, please don't apologize. It's a little tricky since Gaurav is in the same circle of friends. But...
I'll have to leave now. I've left Gia at the neighbor's place and Gaurav will start getting suspicious if I'm late. He's already accused me of having affairs and whatnot.
Are you sure you want to go back to that house? Is it safe for you? Listen, I have a few friends in the area who have non-profits and I'm sure they can help you arrange for some temporary location for you to be in.
I don't want Gia to be in a shelter in the middle of this pandemic. At least for now, I think I'm just going to go back to that house.
Can I give you a ride?
Actually, if you can drop me off at the bus stop close to my place, that would be really nice.
तू तो ऐसे न थे कभी पहले, यूं न थी मुझसे बेरुखी पहले, जिसमें शामिल तुम्हारी मर्जी थी, हमने चाही वही खुशी पहले.
Baba, what is the cosine of 370?
Cosine 370? That is simple trigonometry, Gitu beta. It is the same as cosine of 10. Remember, sine squared x plus cos squared x is 1. I was so good in math when I was your age.
Thank you, Baba.
Sorry, got late. Dinner will be ready in 15 minutes.
Why are you so late today?
Sorry, remember I told you we celebrated our school's Founders Day today? It got over around 6:30 and the buses were so crowded.
Okay. Get me a cup of tea.
Yes. Did you give the kids some snacks for the evening?
They ate whatever you had left for them on the table.
That was for lunch. You didn't give them anything else?
What a genius woman, huh? This Shakuntala Devi. Arey, she got in the Guinness Book of Records a few years ago. Now she's being called by American universities. She works faster than a computer. Hey, Gitu beta, look, can you become like her? Huh?
I don't want to be her. I want to be a doctor.
No, Gitu, you will be a teacher, like your mother. Being a teacher is the best career path for a woman. You can look after your kids and also spend summer holidays with them.
If I'm a good doctor, I can decide when I want to take leave and still have fun with my kids.
You want to be a doctor, Gitu? Can you set the table for dinner, please?
What? Ma, I'm doing maths now.
We have to eat, don't we?
Why can't you ask Bhai to do it? He's in his room, doing nothing. Why do I have to do this all the time?
Because you are the youngest.
What kind of logic is this? Just say it, because I'm a girl.
Gitu, if you are so argumentative, you'll never find your husband.
Ma, you always say the same thing.
Gitu, I know what I'm saying. Don't talk back.
Okay. Can you get me a cup of tea? Huh? Is it coming all the way from Assam? I've been waiting for it for so long. I haven't had anything to eat or drink ever since coming back from office. I never realized you'd be back so late.
Why can't you get something on your own, Baba? Why does Ma need to give you everything?
You don't get into this, Gitu. You're too young. Focus on your studies. You're becoming too argumentative these days.
Gitu, take tea for Baba.
Sorry, Baba, sorry.
This is all your fault. You even indulged too much in her. Can't even serve tea properly. You didn't have to struggle at all. You get things so easily. You have no idea how hard it has been for us to bring you up. You think life is all smooth. You dream and your dreams come true. You have to work hard for them.
I want to work hard for them. But neither do you let me dream, nor do you let me work hard. And Bhai doesn't have to do either. He would just get things thrown at his lap.
Don't talk to your Baba like that. He's your father.
Yes, you tell your daughter that. This is all your fault. Your fault.
Ma? I was defending you. after coming back, exhausted from work. But Baba was just sitting there, not helping you. And you want me to apologize?
Did I ask you to be my lawyer?
Oh, no, no. How can I dare to dream to be a lawyer? Or a doctor? Only be a teacher and come back home and make tea for my husband, and also get slapped once or twice for wanting justice and equality.
Baba didn't slap you because you wanted justice. Baba loves you and wants you to see you happy and successful. You know we have a saying in Bangla, Shashon Kora Tare Shache, Shoha Kore Je. That means only those who love you have the right to discipline you. Oh, Bindu.
Okay. Bye, darling. Yes, it was really nice to see you at the charity event, and I will be at the auction tomorrow. Look, I see my daughter's here. I have to go and talk to her. Bye. Bye. Hi, Rohu. Sorry, sweetie.
Hi,
Come a
Ma.
little closer, baby. I can't see you. Can you come a little
Sorry,
closer?
Ma.
Did you have
Little
dinner?
tired, Ma. Yes, I did have dinner. I've already told you that, Ma. You asked me something else?
Okay. I really like how long your hair has grown. It's good that because of the pandemic, you couldn't go out and get a haircut. Otherwise, you'd have cut it so short, beta, and such crazy styles already.
I mean, I saw Tia Didi's photograph the other day. She's colored her hair blue and it looks beautiful.
Ish, please don't even think about doing that. Long black hair is so good. You should keep it this way.
But why? Why is long hair good and short hair bad?
I don't like it. Bus. I'm just
Amma,
telling you
you
what
don't
I
like a
don't.
lot of things. If I start following them, I won't remember who I am.
And Rohini, why do you have to wear such loud makeup at work?
Amma, what is your problem? First, you have a problem with my hair, and then now with my makeup.
No, but why do you have to draw your eyes like you're a dancer, beta?
But what's the problem if I do look like a dancer? What's wrong with it?
But you're not, na? You should look like a lawyer.
And what does a lawyer look like?
I don't know, but not like this. These red lips and loud makeup and dark eyeliner.
Yes, of course. It would interfere with all the legal work.
Why are you talking like that? Have you ever obstructed your dreams? We've always supported you. Whatever you wanted to do, whoever you wanted to marry, you've always followed your dreams. You never said you cannot do this, cannot do that.
But you're doing just that. Saying that I shouldn't be wearing loud makeup and that I should, have long hair. And can we talk about something else?
Okay. How is Varun? Hmm? By the way, where is he? Rohini? Are you not at home? Where are you? That's why I've been wondering why the walls are looking so different.
This is just a Zoom background, Ma. It's a virtual background.
What is that?
You won't get it. Okay, Ma, I'm exhausted. I'll call you tomorrow. There's just too many cases going on. I've been working almost 18 hours a day.
Sure, Babu. Go to bed. You must be exhausted. Good night, Rohu. And remember, Take your vitamins and your calcium tablets. Good night, baby.
Hello, Gitanjali.
Thank you. Thank you for watching. Let us break the silence. Let's take the finger off our lips. And when you see something, say something. It has been my pleasure to direct this wonderful crew and cast. First, I want to bring up music and makeup, my two Shrutis. Shruti Sarthi, who made the soulful music, and Shruti Sheshadri, who remotely, because we are all social distancing, taught them how to do the makeup with the bruises. Thank you. Next, I have my two men who are product of their society. Varun and Baba. Varun played by Anush Murthy and Baba played by Dilip Ratnam. Thank you. Then I have my three moms who are so similar yet different. Amma, Mom, and Ma. Amma, Vijinathan. Mom, Rohini's mom, Rita Bhatia. And Monica Mehta Chitkara. I think she might have to have her video turned on. I think we're waiting for Monica Mehta Chitkara.
I think she momentarily dropped off.
Okay, maybe we can come back to her, but thank you, moms. And then finally, my three brave survivors, Gitu, Gitanjali, and Rohini. Gitu played by our youngest, Anika Warrior, Gitanjali, Malvika Jaisaman, and Rohini by Devika Ashok. Finally, oh, there is Monica Mehta Chitkara for a second. Okay. Hi, Monica. I guess you got dropped. You know, this is Zoom. Technical problems happen, but there she is. I would now like to call the writer who put the words on the page, and it was my honor to bring the words of the page onto the Zoom stage, Dr. Sukanya Chakrabarti. We are not related, we're just friends. And now I'd like to bring back the entire cast and crew for a final bow before I hand it over to Divya. Thank you. So I would now like to turn it over to, thank you, cast. It was wonderful. I would like to now hand it over to my one woman tech crew, Divya Balu, who handled the sound and the slides and everything. And now she's going to call all the panelists and also moderate the panel discussion. Please stick around, ask any questions you may have. It's going to be a lot of resources, and everyone take care. Thank you. Over to you, Divya.
Thank you so much, Ranjita Di, and thank you to this wonderful cast and crew. And if I may have you turn your videos off, that's fantastic. Lovely. So again, another big round of thank you to to Ranjita Di, to Sukanya, and the cast and crew for an engaging performance this evening. Hi everyone, my name is Divya Balu. I'm one of the co-founding artistic directors of Cloud Playhouse, along with Malvika Jaisimha and Rita Bhatia. Malvika and Rita, may I have you join us on this virtual stage? Lovely. And hi, Sonia, nice to see you.
Lovely to see you. Thank you so much for including me in this amazing performance. I know Ranjita from other plays. I am so impressed by both Sukanya and Ranjita. Just really an honor to be here.
Oh, lovely. Yeah. Absolutely. It's an honor for us to have you here. So everyone, I'll be a main moderator for this evening's panel discussion. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and today being the International Day of the Girl Child, we are especially honored to have the opportunity to present a performance and a talkback session that allows us as a community to talk about domestic violence, especially during a pandemic when we're experiencing shelter in place and heightened restrictions. This is, of course, a conversation not meant to be had just in private, but to be discussed in broader groups among friends, family members, other agencies, and support networks. And with that, it gives me great pleasure to call on our panelists this evening. We have Sonia Pilia, board president at Maitri, that does transformative work empowering domestic violence survivors in the South Asian community. Sonia has been a gender equality leader for over 25 years now, and I believe was recently a recipient of the Game Changer Award from Women Empowerment North America. And as I said, Sonia, we're absolutely honored to have you with us today.
It's my pleasure, really. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome, Sonia.
We also have Annie Lagunas, Housing First Manager at SAVE, which is Safe Alternatives to Violent Environments. Hi, Annie, nice to see you.
Hello, thank you.
Welcome, Annie.
And Annie is a champion advocating for domestic violence relief efforts in the Bay Area, and her personal journey is truly, truly inspiring. So thank you once again, Annie, for all your work, and we look forward to your insights this evening.
I'm honored, thank you.
I'd also like to introduce to you Sara Khan, Director of Programs at the Asian Pacific Institute on Gender-Based Violence. Hi, Sara, nice to see you. Hi, Sara. I believe we can't still hear you. It might have been...
Do you want to try and unmute me again?
We can hear you now, loud and clear.
All good.
Lovely. So Sara has close to about 20 years of experience in grassroots activism, domestic violence advocacy, and community education and empowerment. And Sara, we're absolutely delighted to have you join us today. I want to specifically thank Shailaja, Dixit, and Deepthi Warrior from SAVE for connecting us with these wonderful women. Deepthi Warrior also helped conceptualize this evening, and we specifically thank her for her passionate undertaking. We would like to make this an interactive conversation, so please do use the Q&A button available at the bottom of your Zoom screens to ask a question to any one of our panel members. And with that, Malvika, I'll hand it over briefly to you.
Sure. Thank you, Divya. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge that Alameda County Family Justice Center of the District Attorney's Office of Alameda County has really been very enthusiastic about supporting this initiative. And for that, we're very thankful. They were there watching our program yesterday. We had a show yesterday as well. So we're really thankful for their support. Back to you, Divya.
Thanks, Malvika. So allow me to start the discussion with a question to you, Sarah. And Annie and Sonia, please feel free to add your perspectives as well. So Sarah, can you tell us what is domestic violence and help us understand a little bit about the certain cultural nuances that are related to domestic violence?
Absolutely. So I'm going to start off by what you're asking is like a semester long question to be answered in 2 minutes. And I'm going to try my best, and Annie and Sonia chime in. So really quickly, let's talk about culture, right? So I want to lay the context of all cultures are basically ethnic and identity specific groups that have cultural identities as well as gender norms, right? And every culture has strengths, and that would be your traditions, your struggles, your triumphs. What culture does is does nourish pride, resilience, and belonging, right? But then we also have harm in every culture. Culture prescribes and maintains what I call the traditional patriarchal gender norms and roles. It defines transgressions, and then it also punishes you based on what perceived culture is. That is one side of culture. Then there are culture of, there are three more domains. One is the culture of gender-based violence. So that is where you devalue women and girls, LGBT, gender non-conforming folks, and normalize or minimize abuse. There's the culture of ethnic identity-based communities, where it's like, again, we have resilience and thriving, and yet they inflict harms by maintaining that status quo. And there is the culture of the systems, whether in this country or any other country, systems which typically fail survivors, create barriers, they withhold resources, you are always punished, and they increase abuser impunity. And everything compounds trauma. So when we talk about domestic violence, and specifically if we talk about domestic violence in the South Asian culture, it is a pattern of power and control over another person. And it has many manifestations, but the ones that we mostly talk and see in our society is around physical abuse. There's also emotional abuse. There's also sexual abuse. There's financial abuse. There's immigration abuse. You know, any abuse, you name it, you add on. Here in the United States, we talk about intimate partner violence. So which is basically the person you're intimate with is the one who is abusing. But in the South Asian context, it could also mean extended family abuse. You know, you have in-law abuse and other folks in the community who may take it upon themselves to abuse you. And that was my nutshell.
So, I think Sarah, by the way, hi, Sarah. Sarah and I go back a very, very long time. She was our first fabulous program director at Maitri and our executive director. One of the things, Sarah, that you mentioned, so much of the patriarchy is prevalent in every culture, right? But then there's this layer when you become an immigrant. And when you become an immigrant, you lose the social networks, you lose the familial networks, right? And I remember this, and I think you may also remember this, Sarah, is that many years ago, this Latina domestic violence advocate said, the green card is a green club. And when you're an immigrant, there are so many more ramifications that happen that get layered on the patriarchal violence against women and the pieces that Sarah talked about. There could be a threat if you're an immigrant to withhold your legal status. It's very frequent. Papers are shredded. I think it was talked about in the play itself, right? That she didn't have access to her papers. We heard of stories where the application's been withdrawn for the green card. I remember a client in the early days who, when she went to her interview at that time it was called the INS, and they showed her a folder where he had written 20 letters saying that she had married him for the green card, which absolutely was not true. So if you think of domestic violence, control, patriarchy, socialized violence against women, and then you add immigrant problems. You don't have a social network, you don't have access to money, you don't have anyone you can reach out to, so you don't have your phone. And the pandemic is now showing us the isolation that survivors are actually, it's like 1,000-fold almost. right?
Actually, that's true. Welcome all. Actually, I want to welcome all of you here. Thank you so much, Sonia and Annie and Sarah, for being with us here today. Really appreciate you taking the time. I know all of you are very busy, but thank you. Really appreciate you guys being here. That brings me, Sonia, to the next question that we have heard that ever since the pandemic and the shelter in place started, that there has been an increase in the observed cases of domestic violence. And in your experience, can you tell us what has actually changed in during COVID-19?
So, you know, initially what happened, which I have to tell you, it's heartbreaking. I've done this work for 27 years, right? Over 27 years. It's really heartbreaking. Initially, the calls from the new clients or the people who were thinking about leaving just dropped. The clients who were already working with us just went through the roof because they lost their jobs. 90% of our clients lost their jobs. They didn't have money. How were they going to pay the rent? Where were they going to get the groceries? The children were home. They didn't have laptops. They didn't have, you know, we work with all South Asian women, but we continue very long-term support for women who are in the super marginalized band, right? And then in the last 7 months, we have seen a steady increase of 40% more calls from new clients, crisis intervention, crisis calls, right? And so this was a situation that happened pretty early on where she didn't have a place to go. So we moteled somebody for 2 months. Where do you get food from if you have certain requirements of a dietary requirements, which are perhaps based on your religion, right? We used to give gift cards for grocery stores. Well, we can't get to them, so how do we deliver the groceries? So we've done food runs where we go and buy 2 volunteers who, you know, get all clothed up and then they go by and then we deliver stuff. To file an application for, you know, unemployment, homeless shelter, any of these, you need access to a laptop and internet. The vast majority of clients we have don't have that. So it's been very stressful. Honestly, not just for the volunteers, advocates, I still take on clients, but for our staff, it's been just heartbreaking, right? Here are people who are trying to get hold of us. There's no way for us to call them back safely. The abuser is in the house with them. And I think the story where, you know, one of the women spoke about saying, I don't want to go to the shelter, I want to stay home. These are the horrible choices survivors are making. And unless there is some kind of support structure that's put in to say from the government, which, you know, is a complete failure right now, right? I mean, I can't even go down that path. But if there is, you know, a way for us to say, okay, these are the requirements. We're going to be in this pandemic for another 12 months, right? Probably 18 months. We need the governments to step in and provide programs and services that are going to support women survivors, not just women, I shouldn't say women survivors only, but, you know, all of the survivors who are in intimate partner violence situations.
And Sonia, if I may add on, I think we talk about the pandemic right now and the issues that it's causing, but I think once everything has lifted and once people are able to get out and really start to be free again, out of shelter, being sheltered in place, I think we're going to be able to see the real impact that sheltering in place has really caused. Because I don't think at this time we can really see the ramifications yet, but we will, and then it will be devastating.
You know, Annie, I'm going to tell you that, you know, because of the security reasons, we stopped taking intakes into our transitional home, which is a 9-bedroom facility. And we had 2 bedrooms available for a woman and child. But the problem was the other 7 women and the other 8 children, right? Their safety was of such deep concern to us that we had to hold off. And, but how long can you hold off, right? And so, and the county is issuing new directives every day. The staff is just overwhelmed by dealing with the directives that are coming through. And, you know, a lot of it is panic directives, right? So how do you when this pandemic lists, which is not even a thought that's in one's mind, the mental health issues, the children, the suffering of the children, we've not even gone down that path.
I was going to say we have really not gone down how this is affecting the children, because often most of the times that the children end up speaking or have reports is when they go to school.
Yep.
So now that they're not in school, don't know what adverse childhood cases they're going to be against them. And I think this
you
is
should talk about, Sarah, you should really talk about adverse childhood experiences, because I think people think they should stay in a marriage because of the children. But, you and I know so much better, Nani, because of this. I think it'd be a really interesting little touch on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we keep talking about, unfortunately, when we talk about domestic violence, we usually make it about her, and I'm using the gender she because that's the one that is most affected, but this is all, for all genders. So it becomes like it's a woman's experience, it's a woman's issue, and these people are going to go there. And I just want to keep like, and we've all been through, Sonia, right, about how we are family breakers and we want to go in there and ruin families. The reality is, which family doesn't have an argument, right? That you fight with your parents, you fight with your siblings, you have issues around. But the point is, there is value. There's some sort of a equal relationship with power and control. What happens is that one person ends up using their power and control over the powerless. So like, for example, parents end up beating their children because their children can't beat them back, or you hit your partner, or you control them in other ways. What happens when you're a child and you see these things that scares you, your brain goes into a fright or flight mode. Now there's nowhere to go. Over time, your brain starts getting used to this, and it just creates all these issues. And domestic violence, as we have found out, is also a learned pattern. It's a behavioral issues. So you will have people from either, kids in your family learning both sides, like learning that it's okay to, this is the norm, and which it's not. And so then I think a big part of the work that we also focus on, and with children having adverse childhood experiences, how do you change it, and how do you do, like when you talk about anti-bullying, you also show them what a good relationship looks like way back in maybe elementary school. I feel like by the time we get to middle school, high school, it's already too late.
And those ramifications for children are something that carry into adulthood. As a survivor, as someone who was in a very abusive and violent marriage for 19 years before I could gain freedom, both of my daughters lived their whole life in that. And it was very interesting now to see them as adults and realize that the ramifications of the damage that was done to them emotionally, psychologically, has carried well into their adulthood and shows in a lot of different ways. And that fight and flight mode is something that my oldest daughter has lived almost her whole life in, which is scary to really think about, that she was so accustomed to operating in that mode that it has been very challenging for her to make the shift into just being an adult. And we think that our children are not understanding, even if they are young, that they don't understand, that they can't be part of, that they don't know what's happening. But the reality is that they understand far better than we do and know that the situation is not normal long before we do as victims.
It's truly inspiring, Annie, to hear your story. And thank you so much for kind of using that story to help others as well. I'm sure it inspires others to either take note of it, be more aware, or speak up themselves. So thank you again. And Annie, if you could help us out, and kind of, we often hear that it's not easy for survivors to leave a relationship. In some cases, it may not be the best option for them as well, or there is no one way to respond to an abusive relationship. What are some of the factors that make that decision complicated?
It's very challenging. And like I said, I was in an abusive marriage for 19 years. After I finally became free with my daughters, we tried to think about how many times we'd actually tried to leave. And we've kind of lost count. It's around 13. And that's a lot. That seems like a great amount of attempts, failed attempts. And that is about the average for most survivors. It really does take a lot of time. And one of the main challenges for leaving is not only the stigma and the shame, depending on what culture you come from, but it may also be that your relatives, your mother-in-law, kind of guilt you into returning back to that abusive relationship out of obligation, out of shame for the family or the community. Another thing is fear. The fear from the person that's causing us harm is huge and very hard for people who have never experienced it to understand the real fear that comes with, not necessarily for our own safety, because sadly we become accustomed to the abuse. We know how to deal with it, right? We know how to cope with it. But it's fear out of what they may do to our children or what they may do to other people who we love, who are in our family circle. So that fear also is one of the huge factors that keeps us in relationships or keeps us going back.
And if you really look at this, Divya, in the perspective of when you layer the cultural context, which says that, shame on you, and then your children, shame on them, and your parents, shame on them, right, for raising you incorrectly. That's a huge burden. I still remember this case we had many, many years ago. And, she finally decided, and as Annie said, she went through many times trying to leave. Her parents finally supported her. And then the religious leader of their community said, if you leave, we will excommunicate you from the religion. So if you think of the number of hurdles that women have to go through, or women in the South Asian context, or even LGBTQ community members, it's really basically you're climbing Mount Everest without oxygen, and then you have children with you, and then you don't have a job because one of the play performers said that they were a physician, right? We've had so many clients who have been physicians, engineers, PhD holders, amazing careers, and then were not allowed to work. So, everything is being sandbagged against you. And then to find your path through this and then, emerge out there, it's a Herculean task. And, sometimes when people say things like, I know this is one of Sarah's pet peeves also, is that why did she not just leave, right? And, the question is, why didn't he just stop abusing? And people don't think of it that way. And when you look at the collateral damage that happens to the children is direct damage, the woman is direct damage, and then you have the parents, the uncles. And sometimes when I talk to a parent or a cousin or a friend, and it's shattering to hear the devastation they are experiencing because of the abuse that their niece, their friend, their cousin, their sister is doing. So it's not just one person in a community, right? It's our collective. I should be hurt if somebody in my community is being hurt, or any woman is being hurt for this reason. And I think people don't think of it like this. I think people take it as this isolated thing. Well, she was a doctor, she was an engineer, she could have gone to school, she could have done this. It's always victim blaming. It's always saying she could have done this. But where are we in this collective responsibility? Why are we not stepping up and saying, if somebody is in a situation, there are options? Why does it take so long to leave? There are so many factors around this. Why are we so insensitive, right? Sometimes I'm appalled by what community members say. She shamed them. I'm like, what the hell? She shamed them for what? right? Shouldn't he be shamed for what he did, or the abuser did, or the batterer did? But it's. I think people are very quick to judge, and that is a huge issue always. Our community is changing. Yes, it is changing, but I wish it was changing faster. It didn't take us 25, 30 years to get here. But it's sometimes the things people say are just appalling. I mean, I know Sarah knows, we know each other, we text each other and say, can you believe that this person just said this? I'm like, I don't know. I really don't know what to say when somebody is so unkind and so uncompassionate.
Thank you, Sonia. I'd like to ask a question from one of our audience members. So how do you help women who are victims of domestic violence, especially those who are physically disabled and financially dependent on their abusive partners? Is there capacity and funding to provide for them and take care of their medical and family needs? And maybe Annie, you could answer this.
That's a great question. And finances are always a challenging aspect, and one of the main factors that actually keeps people in abusive situations is not being able to maintain finances on their own. I can speak for our agency specifically. Our shelter and our services are all disabled friendly. So our facility is handicap available. Our shelter is also ADA friendly. We service everyone from deaf to blind to handicapped in any and all other ways. We are very open to being able to support those folks. And as part of the Housing First team, we have funds that specifically are able to assist clients when they are able and when they are ready to leave their abusive situations, to possibly get them somewhere safe, to get them on their feet, to put them into housing, to help subsidize that until they can get to a place where they are financially in a better place to be able to maintain on their own. So there are services out there specifically for people that are handicapped in different ways. And we at SAVE really don't see that. We see the survivor. We don't see the other barriers that they may see or that they feel will keep them from getting assistance. That is not what we see. We see a survivor that needs assistance, and that's what we do. That's who we help.
Our transitional home is also completely compliant with everything with any handicapped survivors. We have a little bit of a different perspective in terms of, because we serve the immigrant community. And so when we started out with Maitri, one of the things we realized was that immigrant survivors have immediate assistance for legal assistance, because the laws in the home countries are so different, right? And then if they don't have a support structure here or social support structure and don't know that they can actually call the cops and it's safe to call them and you will be taken to a shelter which is safe. So we built this into our DNA, which is we have what we call the empowerment grants and loans program. And so what we try to do is that we look at the immediate needs of a survivor who calls us, irrespective of their disability or any kind of challenges they may have. And so we try to provide sort of a net of support around what are the immediate needs, whether it's medical assistance or is it food, et cetera, et cetera. If they can go into a shelter, if not, we will motel them, et cetera. Then the transitional home. And then, of course, there is such a huge push by organizations, Maitri, SAVE, Next Door, etc., on permanent housing. So we actually even did a program which we've been running for about 4 years, where we support 6 survivors into housing, which is not through the county, but we support them with the idea that in 6 months to 9 months, they will actually become independent and take over their own support. There is a lot of resources, and I have to say California and the counties we live around here, Alameda, Santa Clara, we are so progressive compared to other parts of even California, and there's so much support that I think if somebody is thinking about it, at least have a conversation first. Know what's out there, make an informed decision. I think for so many of us, fear keeps us locked in. And if you actually have a conversation and find out what all is available, then I think, embarking on that journey of leaving, trying to leave 13 times or 15 times or whatever, how many times it takes you to get out, is just that much slightly better and easier.
And I want to add one more thing there. And I totally love and agree with everything that you and Annie have said. And because we are here on this call, and this is 2020, and I encourage all of us to think past what resources are available to help this A person get from point A to point B. I want us all to challenge ourselves and think about, why is this person supposed to leave in the first place? Like, why is a woman paid 66 cents to a dollar that a man is paid? Why is housing so hard to get? Why? Like, question ourselves, check our own biases, see the difference between the mom in the play, like with the hair, with the makeup, with what biases we have. And I'll give a very simple example. The way my mom is with me, she doesn't act like that way with my bhabhi. My mom is a very empowered, passionate woman who's raised her daughters to be strong, passionate women. But does she do the same thing with my bhabhi? I mean, if my mom's watching this, she'll kill me because she thinks, yes, she does. But the reality is that she does have biases, right? And so even in our own families, do we check that? And that is where the start has to be. Yes, we need all sorts of resources. There are about 140 South Asian women's organizations. There are God knows how many Asian and Pan-Asian agencies working, because I work for a National Resource Center, that's why I'm telling you that. But the reality is, it's the same people who then marry and dump is another of a South Asian issue. Sonia, you've dealt with it so much. But it's the same person who then goes back and marries someone else, and then even that woman comes to us. So it's the abuser. There are fewer abuser and more people who are abused. So the people who harm, if we could work with them, and that's what I'm encouraging everyone to think in those terms. There are schemes and there are things, but clearly they haven't worked because
not enough, right? We're band-aiding the problem. And actually, it's an interesting thing you said, Sarah. So we, at Maitri, we did exercise 25 years. So Maitri will be 30 years in February. And we did this project about 4 years ago. It took us a year to complete. So we started it in the 25th year. And one of the things that came out from the stellar staff we have, the board, the volunteers, was that we wanted to make prevention as important as crisis intervention. And we've always done prevention, but it's been ad hoc and it's been 20%. And once we realized that everyone said prevention should be 50% to what Sarah's saying, questioning always, raising these questions, being out there, making people uncomfortable. So 4 years ago, we decided that 50% prevention and 50% crisis intervention. And lo and behold, we get this amazing grant from Santa Clara County, and we are already a year into our second year into this grant. And if you go to our Facebook page, and you will see, it's called Engaging Men and Boys. And this is just one little example of what we are doing in prevention, ranging from ages 14 onwards to 90, right? Men getting up and saying, this is just nonsense. We can't, why are we doing this? How do I stand up and say, we are done with this, right? And one man speaking up or one woman speaking up means that 10 other people will say, hey, that's a really good point. I really should be with it. It's not these, we've been called this before, divorced, lesbian, breakers, right? It's really, we care, we care about the humanity of it. And so getting in allies, and the allies can be anyone. And what, to Sarah's point, right? The allies can be a grandmother, a grandfather, a nephew, a son, a friend, and, having people speak up. So why is the point that we should all be raising? Why is this like this? Why do we have to do this? Why have we not got more resources?
So that brings me actually to my next question that's in the question and answers. One of our viewers has asked, many times battered women will not open up or approach NGOs voluntarily. How can friends of such women discreetly bring such cases, for lack of a better word, to the notice of NGOs? Will the NGO then step in and help out on their own? And do the NGOs work with the government or other government funded organizations to get a restraining order on the abusive party and help fund the lawyer, divorce proceedings, affected family situation? Annie, maybe you can answer this for us.
Yes, the answer is yes. So all of our agencies in the Tri-County area all have services. All of our advocates are versed in being able to support with restraining orders. That's a huge, important part. And sometimes people think it's just a piece of paper. Sometimes it is a piece of paper, but sometimes it's so much more than that. It's a way to hold people accountable. And it is a way to really enforce what we want as survivors, and that is to be left alone. And the process is long, it can be challenging. Most agencies do support not only with advocate support in being able to fill out the paperwork, to go and accompany the victim to court. Legal services are sometimes included in what we do. Sometimes we refer them out to other agencies. Other agencies have more range in the legal aspect. SAVE does not, so we refer out. But sometimes we have funding that is able to support clients if that is what they need. And it is a huge, huge step in taking a restraining order. That brings up a lot of things. It is also very dangerous once you file for a restraining order and the person who's causing harm is served. You're stepping up your independence and starting to scrape away some of that control that's been holding you down, something that the people who cause us harm hold on to very dearly, right? That's how they maintain who they are, is by controlling us. And the more we strip away that control, the more dangerous it does really become for victims and for survivors. And that is another aspect that actually keeps people in situations, is the fear of what could really happen if you get away. And that is a real danger. As we know, 1 in 3 women here in the United States alone die every day at the hand of the person who says they love them. That is very dangerous. That is a high number. If we really think about 1 in 3 women, think about how many people are on this call. That's huge. And it goes back to prevention. It goes back to really teaching women how to manage, how to take care of themselves, how to do finances. We hold financial workshops. We hold life skills workshops. Once the survivor leaves, there are so many skills she has been stripped from. They have been stripped away. She has nothing. She has nothing. And without the knowledge, without the support, it is very difficult to move forward. Very difficult. And support is one of the main aspects that survivors need in all aspects. Therapy, counseling, case management, workshops, life skill building, finances. All of those things are extremely important. And then we add on all the layers that we've already been talking about: cultural, immigrant status, visas being revoked. All of these other challenges get layered onto all of these other challenges that are baseline for all survivors.
I do want to address what you said. Thank you, Annie. So comprehensive. I don't need to add anything to that part. But, you said something about friends calling for support, right? So the philosophy that Maitri follows is that we want to empower the survivor to make the decision to leave, because none of us walk in her shoes. All right. So we don't know the hurdles and the dangers she's navigating. So sometimes friends and family, they get very distressed and they're like, well, back up, leave, And so we suggest to a family member, a friend, a cousin, etc., be there and remind them that there's help available. Encourage them, listen to their story, but don't judge them, because none of us know what we would do if we were in her shoes. And we forget that because we always want to have the answers. And I know I'm very prescriptive myself, like, okay, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, do it. No, this is not how it works. The survivor has to decide when the time is right for them. And, unless I'm a fly on the wall with her the entire time, I don't know, because of the dangers. In the case of immigrant women, the kidnapping of children, minor children, by non-custodial parents is a huge issue. Death threats by extended family. We had a case recently from one of the home countries. She's a doctor right here. You know what he was doing was, when she would call her parents, he was recording her and then cutting the recordings up, so it made it sound like she was wanting to stay with him for the green card, and then he was sending it on WhatsApp groups to 5,000 family extended members, and then who were calling her parents and saying, my goodness, you people are greedy and blah, 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 right? So we don't know the dangers somebody is going through. And so for friends, family, everyone, you can reach out to us, but we cannot do intervention because we don't know the situation in that individual's life. And if they are not ready to leave, I know this sounds horribly difficult to accept. You have to respect her. I find this lack of respect for survivors and what they go through sometimes very difficult. I understand you want them to get out of it. I do. I am like, okay, what can we do to make you leave? But when somebody is ready to leave, you will be amazed by how they blossom. If they're not ready to leave, they will go back, because there are so many forces holding them there. So yes, call us, give our number. I always tell anyone who calls us and says, my friend is suffering, we're like, encourage, listen to their story and just be respectful and say, I'm really sorry you're going through this, but there are many resources you can reach out to. And that's the starting point.
Sonia, I want to say that also at Maitri and at other agencies as well, the one way we support the support person is, obviously keep saying you're not the rescuer, is to help them create a safety plan. And the reality is, you have to realize that the survivor, it's not like, okay, suddenly you got a slap and you have to leave. You have been isolated, your soul has been crushed, your confidence has been taken off. And it takes a lot of strength to live in a relationship where somebody is abusive. So when Annie has tried to leave 13 times, each time she got a little bit closer, but she knows the time. And also, when you live with somebody who is so abusive, you are hardwired, you get it, and you have to go by your instinct alone. So if you leave, if she would have left at the 11th time, God knows he might have killed them, right? They have to judge when is the right time. So we keep saying, like, how there is a white savior complex, the same way there is a rescuer complex. Please don't do a rescuer complex, and not like, why don't you leave? What is wrong with you? Be more trauma informed. Let's talk about how can I help? What are the practical things you can do? How to create a safety plan? You don't have access to your papers. Where can we get your paperwork? Something that keeps you busy because you care, and at the same time is not re-traumatizing the person who's anyway dealing with so much trauma.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. And another thing I think that people need to understand is that people who cause us harm are manipulators, right? They are very good at manipulating the outside, what people see, what people perceive, and how they perceive it. And of course, they are not going to point the finger at themselves. They point the finger at the victim because she is the one to blame. Ultimately, in their mind, she is the one to blame, not them. And so for people who are out there listening, if you know someone, if someone comes to you and confides in you and says, this is what's happening to me, and yet you know who the person that causes them harm is, but yet that's not who you see, please believe her.
Yes.
She is not telling stories. We do not tell these stories for any glory or to get attention. We tell these stories and we confide in someone because it's the truth. And we're looking for someone who can support us, even if it's just to listen to us, because we may not be ready to leave. But believing us over the facade that is created by the person that's causing us harm is very, very important. And it can be very challenging if you know the couple, right? If you know them as a couple in a social world and you know this kind, charismatic, good-looking, very charming man, when she's telling you that she's being abused, it's very hard for the mind to switch and understand that he could be doing those things when you know him as very charming and eloquent and well-educated and good-looking and very well-spoken.
Like we saw in the play, right?
Literature goes on. Yes.
That's exactly how it was in the play. So I will say thank you so much for sharing your insights today. I'm sure there are certain nuances that the time that we have today, we might not be able to cover all of it. So I do encourage, if there's anybody out there who's viewing this either now or later, to make sure that all your questions are valid. So please do reach out to any of the agencies that you have access to gain better understanding, either to help yourselves or to help anybody that you know who might need it. I would like to ask our panelists, though, to share one takeaway message. I know it might be difficult, but I think it helps to kind of give our attendees one main takeaway message that you'd like to provide the community so that they can lean in to collaborative address kind of domestic violence. And if I may ask Annie and then Sarah and Sonia to answer that.
I think one of the takeaways is what I just said. If someone comes to you, please believe her. She is not telling a story. Believe her and listen to her. Just listen. You may not have the answers. You may not know what to do, but listen, because that's what she may need. And educate yourself. There are lots of ways to educate yourself. Go to all of our websites. See the information that we share. Find other websites that have information. Make sure you always have a hotline number with you. That's super important. If she doesn't want to call or if they don't want to call, you can always call and get educated that way.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Annie.
Thank you, Annie. I think I already did my call for action. I definitely ask us to be more self-observant, and rather than like focusing outward, focusing inwards on what our biases are. And once we do that, it will be so much easy to speak up, right? I mean, within our own families and friend circle. And this I am trying hard to do it myself, right? We keep talking about teaching girls how to do self-defense, how to do this, how to do that, how to do finances, ABC, everything. And after a certain age, it's like, well, you did all of that, now you get married and raise kids and then work at home and then work outside. I have a son, I have a teen. I'm trying my best to make sure that I raise a sensitive child who, because at this age, kids don't see the difference. They are learning from us. They won't go this way or that way. So my ask then, a call to action is, let's treat our boys the same way we would treat our girls, like equal, empathetic, and not shame them for being like a girl. If they are sensitive, let them be sensitive. It's a great thing to learn. Again, another whole day's topic on how we treat boys and men and how we can work with them differently. That's another part, but that is something again to think about. Thank you.
And I would say the only way to change the community is be the change yourself. Be altruistic. It's a very hard, long journey for many survivors. Many of them are successful, but many are not. Even donating $10 a month to a domestic violence organization or the Second Harvest Food Bank or any of these organizations makes a difference. If you believe this is unfair, then put your money where you believe. It is so important at this time in this pandemic, even more so. You don't care about Maitri, that's fine. Pick another organization, pick SAVE. Sarah mentioned 140. Pick an agency and set your credit card, it's the cost of not even 2 coffees a day, right? $10 a month. The second thing I want to say is kindness. We as community members, as individuals, as humanity, we really need to be kind and compassionate to each other in this time. And I think people who are going through any kind of violence, familial violence, immigration violence, which is another violence that is put onto survivors, really deserve our compassion and our kindness. Really, really important to think first about how can we change the world that we live in.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sonia, for sharing that. And again, my humble thanks to Sonia, Annie, and Sarah for a wonderful conversation this evening and for all the impactful work that you and your agencies do. And Annie, thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your journey. I'm sure it inspires so many others to act as well. So thank you. And thanks to our lovely audience for joining us today. We appreciate you participating in such an important topic. As I mentioned, if any of your questions or thoughts haven't been answered, please do reach out, even if it helps you or helps somebody else. I think it's always helpful to know that there are people out there to support you. We hope you found today's presentation engaging and insightful as much as I did, and I'm sure Malvika and Rita would join me as I say that. We did live stream this on our Facebook page, so if you think this could help or benefit any of your friends, family members, or colleagues, do share this information with them as well. I thank you all once again. Have a pleasant evening and a great week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
It gives me great pleasure to call on our panelists for this evening's conversation. Bindu Fernandes, who is the Executive Director at Narika.
Hi, everyone. Such a joy to be here.
Hi, Bindu. Bindu has been trained as a domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking counselor, and thanks, Bindu, for joining us today. We're also joined by Zakia Afrin, a manager, client advocacy programs for Maitri. Hi, Zakia.
Hello. Hi, Zakia.
So Maitri does transformative work, empowering survivors for the South Asian community, and we're looking forward to your insights today. I'd also like to finally introduce to you Shailaja Dixit, the community engagement specialist at SAVE. Hi, Shailaja.
Hi.
The SAVE stands for Safe Alternatives to Violent Environments. Shailaja also serves as commissioner on the Contra Costa Commission for Women. I do want to take this occasion to specifically thank Shailaja and Deepthi Warrior from SAVE for connecting us with these wonderful women. And then Deepthi Warrior also specifically, since she conceptualized this evening, and we thank her for her passionate undertaking. We would like to make this an interactive conversation, so please do use the Q&A button that's available at the bottom of your Zoom screens to ask a question to any one of our panel members. So with that, Malvika, I'll hand it over to you briefly.
Yes, I'd also like to take a moment here to acknowledge a very special guest in our audience today. It's our honor to welcome Attorney Sabrina Farrell, who's the Assistant District Attorney of Alameda County and the Executive Director of Alameda County Family Justice Center. Thank you so much for coming. We'd love to hear from you at any point during our discussion this evening. Please do use the Q&A feature to let us know when you're ready to talk, and we'll call upon you. Thank you.
Lovely. So allow me to start the discussion with a question to you, Bindu, and Zakia and Shailaja, please feel free to add your perspectives as well. Bindu, could you tell us what is domestic violence and help us understand certain cultural nuances that are related to domestic violence?
Of course. There is a textbook definition of domestic violence, and it is the pattern of behaviors to maintain control and power over somebody else in an intimate partner. So this is the textbook definition of domestic violence. And what's interesting about this definition really is all the things it mentions and all the things it really does not mention. So for example, one of the core perspectives in domestic violence is really control and power. It doesn't speak to whether it is physical, whether it's emotional, financial, etc., but really just this pattern of behaviors that exerts control and power. The other piece I'll say is no one is exempt from domestic violence. Again, this definition does not talk about a specific gender, a specific race, a specific sexual orientation. It does happen to everyone, of course, disproportionately high with women, and women are survivors disproportionately, but really can happen to anybody, and nobody is exempt, whether socioeconomic or otherwise. One of the things I always reflect about is what is really the difference between conflict in marriages, which everyone in a marriage has experienced, versus domestic violence. And something that I've come to recognize is the intimidation and the fear that kind of happens at the core of domestic violence versus conflict that might happen in every marriage. So there's a lot of different forms of abuse, which many of which were shown in the play. Some of it is physical, there is emotional abuse, there is financial abuse where someone may control the money in the house and really ask you to account for every penny in the home. There is sexual abuse that can happen. There is reproductive abuse that can happen where someone may ask that you have to have children or have to have sex when you may not want to. And there's also threats. It could be the threats of taking your child away from you, threat of not, just threats in general, threats and intimidation, I'd say. You asked a very interesting question about cultural nuances and really what is it that certain cultural groups or certain immigrant communities face that might be additional complexities of domestic violence. And this is, a treasure, a whole thing in itself, right? But some of the things that come to mind is many cultures, including our South Asian culture, has a lot of traditional values of honor and sexuality, especially when it comes to our women. And those play a role in really how someone responds when domestic violence happens at home. There's also a lot of domestic violence as a family issue when it comes to certain cultures, like many of our South Asian cultures, where, hey, we talk about it within our homes and it is not something we bring out into the community or something. It's not for us to air our dirty laundry out in public. So that can be one of the cultural responses to domestic violence happening, where our survivors or any of us might feel like, hey, we want to contain it within the house. It doesn't have to go outside the home. Of course, there are many responses around fear of law enforcement, immigration complexities. So many of our immigrant survivors may be on an H4, exactly like the play suggested, where the person causing them harm might be someone who is the primary visa holder. And these are instances, again, where you really have to choose between, do I stay in an abusive relationship or leave the US and go back to India or back away from my US citizen children? And all these kind of add to the additional complexities that certain cultures and many immigrant survivors face.
That is wonderful.
Thank you, Bindu. And, I actually have a question for Zakia. Zakia, ever since the pandemic and the shelter in place has started, we've heard that there has been an increase in observed cases of domestic violence. In your experience over the last few months, what has really changed during COVID-19? What are the trends? What have you seen? If you could just share something with us about that.
Right. First of all, thank you for putting together such a beautiful play. I mean, it touches on so many different aspects of domestic violence, right from the beginning, the patriarchy, the growing up of the girl child and turning into a woman and still experiencing similar situations in her life. So that was really beautiful. I wanted to thank you. And during COVID, like Bindu has actually gave a very comprehensive definition, right? What domestic violence look like. So with all of that, we have seen some additional barriers, some additional stress that survivors and victims are going through. And a lot of it has to be with the fact that you are confined at your home. Many women would choose, like we saw in the play, that she got really upset and she decided to get outside, go to the office. But at certain point, people who don't have a job, who probably just go out to meet a friend or take a walk, they're not able to go out. And that can really harm somebody's mental well-being. So in the beginning, first 2 weeks, we saw that calls were actually almost silent. our phones were very silent because it was a shock. We went home on a Monday and Tuesday there was a shelter-in-place order. Even as an agency, we were not prepared how we could remotely offer all of these services that we all provide. But after the first few weeks, then we realized that how much it has affected the victims or survivors that are still at home while not able to take that step outside. And for the ones that have taken that step outside, the pandemic had brought in additional troubles with finances, with housing, with their rental situation, with filling out simple paperwork when they needed English help, language help. So, if I have to mention a statistics, I will say beginning in March until last month, we have seen a 40% increase in new crisis calls, which is huge for an agency like ours that only caters to a specific South Asian community in the Bay Area and some adjacent areas. And then in the legal program also, we are overwhelmed with calls for restraining orders, for police-related matters, for hearings that's coming up, for getting ready. So this pandemic, other than the household stress, you take care of your children, you do all of the housework, all of that, and then you have this abusive relationship that you cannot escape from. So this is a storm. This is a perfect storm for many of our survivors that we are really trying to navigate through even now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zakia. And this question is for Bindu and Shaila. So most of us in the audience today are from the Bay Area and surrounding areas. What services do agencies offer to help with domestic violence?
So Narika, I'm with Narika, and Narika offers counseling programs. So we have a domestic violence helpline where anyone can call in. It's a toll-free number. Anybody can call in at any time and receive services. Usually this can range from safety planning. How do I stay safe when something is happening at home? Many times people are just trying to find out what resources there are and not necessarily make a commitment to something. So things like, do I have any legal recourse for certain things that are happening? How do I make sure I take care of my kids, etc.? So we do have that domestic violence helpline that anybody can call into. The number is on our website. It's www.narika.org. We also have counseling services, as I shared before. We do have support groups. So these are community groups where survivors can get together with like-minded people to talk to each other and learn about resources and find community in each other. We also have job programs, which has skyrocketed during COVID-19 because a lot of our survivors have lost their jobs, especially service industry jobs. And so our job programs are usually 10 to 12 week long or personalized and intended to really support someone toward financial independence. And we do wellness programs as well. There's a lot of programs Narika does, and people can reach us through our website or call us or email us at any point to hear more about the services that we offer.
Thank you, Bindu. And Shaila.
Hi, good evening. I want to first, of course, thank Cloud Playhouse for this platform. The play was beautiful, and it's an honor to be actually with all the fellow advocates. We don't often get time or an opportunity to sit with our fellow advocates and talk about this, so I really appreciate this. In terms of services, SAVE is located in Fremont, Safe Alternatives to Violent Environments. We provide supportive services to survivors of domestic violence. And just like Bindu said, the most well-known service we have is our 24/7 crisis line, which is answered anytime anybody calls. And I do want to emphasize that anybody calling into any hotline, whether Narika, Saves, or Maitri's, it is confidential. No one is going to force you to answer anything that you don't want to answer, and it is the gateway to all services. So if there's nothing else we take away from all the services offered today, please remember the confidential hotlines are open and available to anybody who's seeking help, including friends who want to help somebody in trouble. And then apart from that, SAVE also has a safe house, which is the shelter. We have advocates who work very closely with the police departments of 5 cities. So they help you with restraining orders. They would accompany you to the courts when the courts were operating. Now with the pandemic, things are changing, of course. We have a clinical program that offers individual counseling, couples counseling, as well as support groups. Everything is running virtually right now. All of SAVE services are free. And we also have our housing program, which, as the name says, assists with housing, which can be anywhere from flexible assistance, where we are assisting with anything that will help sustain housing, such as childcare or transportation costs, to the actual subsidy of a rent as needed. So there's a whole slew of services that we offer, and our most unique offering, which right now, unfortunately, with the Empowerment Center, it is not working, but it is actually a walk-in center where any survivor can walk in to get help. The lines are still open. You can still schedule appointments, but we have a place where physically people can come in to get food, to rest. We've had women and children walk in to just use a laptop, the printer, to eat, to rest, to sleep. We've given blankets out, and they can get walk-in services with the community case manager. So I'll just say that we are grateful to the community that supports our services. That's why we're able to offer it for free. And our helpline actually has access to almost 300 languages. So if somebody calls in with a language that our staff or volunteers don't speak, we are able to immediately get help, which is very much needed in a diverse, Bay Area culture like ours. So we are appreciative to be here.
Thank you, Shaila. And Zakia, what about legal support and policy advocacy? How's that supported? Yeah.
Thank you, Malavika. I think Bindu and Shailaja has already mentioned what kind of services our agencies provide. So we also have a helpline, which is live from 9 to 3. And then afterwards, anybody can leave a message. We will pick up that message and return. So just to say about the legal program, we work very closely with attorneys and help people with their paperwork, prepare them for their court hearings, restraining order, custody related matters mostly. We also provide immigration assistance depending on the relief people may be eligible to. And in the recent times, you have seen that so much of hostility coming out in terms of immigration situation, and we find ourselves to do some of those immigration related safety planning at the first call that we have with the survivor. What are your rights if you are stopped by an law enforcement officer or even an ICE agent? What to say, what not to say, and most of all, that you have the right to remain silent before you actually get hold of an attorney. So all of those we are trying to do. And policy is something that we are slowly getting into. We realize that after 30 years, Maitri has been in the Bay Area for almost 30 years next year. And it's time for us to move on. Just putting on a Band-Aid and doing the crisis intervention is not enough. We have to go at the root of the problem and try to solve and create a healthy new generation. So in terms of policy, we do a lot of advocacy with the federal government for funding, Violence Against Women's Act related funding, which also comes with immigration benefits. At the state level, we regularly advocate for new laws and bills that will support survivors. You know that the governor has signed the grassroots grant for many undocumented immigrants who did not really qualify to get any unemployment or the IRS benefits. So we advocated actively for that. At the city and county level, we work with the police on their responses, making sure that language access is provided, which Shailaja mentioned. It's very important in the Bay Area to have language access for people when they not only come to our agency, but also go outside to the police, to the court for that, and cultural responsiveness. That all the justice partners know that people from South Asia, people from African countries, people from all these different parts of the world, they need culturally responsive services, not just one size fits all. So we do quite a bit. And in the Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we are, a lot of our volunteers, they are going to different city council meetings, doing public comment for raising awareness on domestic violence. And we just got a commitment from the Newark mayor that he's going to give us a resolution commemorating this month. I think Shailaja did it with San Ramon last year, if I'm not wrong. So that's really exciting for us. And lastly, I also want to mention that regularly, like many other DV organizations, I'm sure that both of my colleagues here, they can agree, we also get behind the intersectional movements like Black Lives Matter. it is very important for us to make sure law enforcement is not discriminating against people of color, because it's not just the Black people, right? It's all of us. It can affect all of us, or any kind of draconian policy that targets one specific group, like the Muslim ban, that these are really harmful. So we readily always get behind these movements and try to make sure that our survivors are not facing yet additional barriers for this. Shailaja, you wanted to say something?
Nothing. I was just nodding my head really vehemently to say I so agree with you on the intersectionality of it, because anywhere, any movement, any injustice, at the heart of it, if you look at homelessness, disability, unemployment, really survivors are impacted. They're the most vulnerable in any community. And truly, if we treat domestic violence as something that happens by itself, we are not going to be able to resolve it. There's really systemic impacts to what is causing somebody to experience it, and then what keeps them in the cycles of that domestic violence. So Zakia, I couldn't agree more with you on how important it is for us to really recognize and work with all the movements around us, be it racial, social, economic, whatever injustice we are talking about. So
Lovely. Thanks, thanks, Zakia, for providing that. So this next question I bring to you from our audience. It's from Savita, and it speaks to allyship and friends and family. So Bindu, I might come to you for this. I'll read the question. It says, Savita says, I once called one of the Bay Area DV groups on behalf of a friend who was being abused, but was so frozen in her response that she was unable to act, and was told that I could not act on her behalf since they needed to hear from her. I understand the need for privacy and confidentiality, but what is the best way to help someone in such a situation when one simply cannot move but wants to leave and be helped?
So if I understand that question correctly, I'm guessing the friend called on behalf of someone, and the survivor itself probably wasn't sure about what to do.
That is right. The survivor ended up not wanting to talk about it. And then the friend asks, how can I best help someone who clearly needs help, but doesn't, want to take action at that point?
Absolutely. I would start by saying it's important to listen and to listen. I mean, start by listening and start by believing, which I'm sure you are doing. The important part about listening really in the story is, if it seems like your friend does not want to do anything, it's important to respect those choices. It may seem very difficult. We all are extremely invested in our friends and our families, and it might be difficult to say, hey, why is it that you can't do anything? But it's really important to pause and listen to really what they're saying, because many times that survivor will make that decision for themselves, whatever it is, whether it is to stay in that relationship or not. So I'd always start by saying listen and believe. Being discreet is something I would always recommend as well. It's really important that as someone shares the story, yes, of course you can share it with a DV agency, but really to kind of hold that story for yourself, because it's really not our stories to tell. It is somebody else's story to tell, right? Apart from that, I'd say it goes back to the centering the story, centering the survivor in this entire decision making. If that survivor does not want to do anything, or does not want to take action, does not want to leave, does not want to involve law enforcement, physicians, etc., that's really their decision to make. And the best thing you can do as a friend is to support that decision, is really show up for that survivor the way they want to be shown up. It's something I kind of try to remind myself that it is not important that we do for someone what we want for ourselves, but really do for them what they want for themselves, right? And sometimes we may want to be rescued. We may want someone to take care of us, but really if your friend says, hey, I don't want to do anything right now, maybe all you can do is bring me food. That's all you need to do. Show up for them the way they want you to show up. And that's really what I would hold that person and their needs and their wants central. Be patient. There's a lot of statistics and there's a lot of studies around how many times it takes for someone to leave and come back before they're finally ready to leave an abusive relationship. And so it's important to understand these are not decisions, just as marriages have traversed a lot of time and relationships traverse time. So does leaving. These are very critical, big decisions. They often involve families, involve children. So really to be patient with your friend in terms of whatever it is they need. And so whether it means, again, like I said, showing up for them, being patient, not judging. And as a friend, really one of the best things you can do is reach out on their behalf to an agency and say, hey, how can I be a better friend? What else can I do to support my friend? But really showing up for them in a manner that they want you to show up for, and listening without judgment is the best thing I can offer.
I think that's a great thing for the community, for us to learn, right? Which is, even if the friend is unable to, if a survivor you think is unable to reach out, then we can better equip ourselves with knowledge, right? Figuring out if there's ways in which we can understand a little bit more about what they're going through, right? Which means not only the survivors reaching out to agencies, but the support network as well. And I think that's a brilliant takeaway. Lovely. So I did have another question. Again, it came from our audience. Vaishnavi, the question came in it. Let's see. Okay. So Shailaja, I might call on you to answer this. And of course, Zakia and Bindu, feel free to add your perspectives. So Vaishnavi says, when we speak of domestic abuse, we usually think of adult women. She really loved that the playwright brought in a young girl into the orbit of domestic abuse, mental and physical. Sadly, this is all too common. So a question is, do you ever have occasions when younger victims of domestic violence approach you for help? And if so, do you feel equipped to deal with younger people?
Yes, and thank you for asking that question. Actually, that is a wonderful question. I will step back first to say domestic violence or family violence does have the umbrella of including abuse that may be going on between family members. What we focus on in our agencies, at least I'll speak for SAVE, heavily is intimate partner violence, which is why often our language talks about the adults. I know that Maitri does a lot of work with elderly abuse. At least I've heard Zakia talk about it, so maybe she can speak to that. But in terms of the teens, there are two ways I can think of it. One is teen dating violence. So when the youth go through abuse with their intimate partner, it's called teen dating violence. And actually SAVE has a youth program. We do a lot of work in prevention, and we are gearing up to provide intervention services for youth. So we have a statewide recognized youth program. And we shouldn't forget that children are often impacted by domestic violence that's going on in the, so there is it's not only the adults, but if there are children present in the family, they are going to be impacted by domestic violence, and they also have to be given services. So counseling for the children, helping the mother or whoever the survivor is. I say mother because we often deal with mothers, but it could be a father, it could be another caregiver, helping them give services and parent in a way that helps the healing process start. So yes, long story short, domestic violence, intimate partner violence, family violence does impact. We do have youth who call in our crisis lines. Actually, after you are 12, you are very much within your right legally. And Zakia, you can correct me if I'm misstating the age, but I believe after 12 years, you are very much allowed. And what do you say? You have a right to call, and you have a right to work on even a restraining order if that is needed for your safety. So that is something that's very much part of SAVE's services. And I really appreciate this lens on what the youth go through. Children are how it generationally keeps going on. If that's where it's normalized, that's where the cycle of violence keeps continuing. So yeah, and I'll just say this. We all think that our children don't date in our communities. They do. We have to have that conversation. Teen dating violence is very much happening in South Asian communities too, just like we are silent with adult relationships. It is a false expectation and false assumption that teen dating violence is not occurring in South Asian communities. So please, we must have this conversation with our children preventively, and we must step up to give support if we see anybody, if we sense that our youth are facing some kind of abusive relationship. Be a trusted adult.
So if I may just add to what Shaila has said, just 2 points. In terms of the teen violence, let's not forget that if a child is distressed because of domestic violence happening at the home environment, and either the school or the doctors or the justice system gets hold of that situation, the parents will be held responsible.
Yes.
They cannot get out free out of this, right? They have to take responsibility for the child. And many times we see that wrongfully, many domestic violence victims who don't even have any agency in their own relationship are held responsible that how couldn't you, protect your children. So this is another area we like to work with the state agencies to make sure that they don't hold survivors or victims who are already in a domestic violence situation even more, don't cause any more harm to them by holding them responsible and making them accountable for this. So that's one point. Second point I wanted to make, that in the story we saw the mother-in-law came and how she kind of escalated the situation between her son and the daughter-in-law. But think for a moment that this person, if this person has moved to stay with the son and got rid of whatever support system she had in the home country, she's completely at the mercy of this couple. She may be having some health issues that actually require her to maintain a strict diet, maintain a lifestyle, and anything happens with that, this couple can be held for elder abuse and elder neglect, right? And what option would this mother-in-law actually have to escape this situation? She is in a worse situation than Gitanjali, who at least had a legal degree. She was a lawyer. If she wants to do something, that is absolutely her choice. She could probably think of few options for her. What is the choice for this elderly lady? Let's not forget, in our communities, we sometimes overlook that aspect, but I can tell you, we get so many calls from moms that are staying with their children, either a daughter or a son, how overwhelmed they are with housework that has become their responsibility, how they are being responsible for childcare when the son and the daughter-in-law is going for a night out. So let's not forget that. That is also an issue we need to pay attention to.
Yeah. Okay. Can I just say one more quick thing? That to Zakia's point, we do see that the mom is giving the message normalizing the violence. And oftentimes women will criticize each other saying women are the women's worst enemies. I just want to say patriarchy impacts everybody. And internalized patriarchy, when we have internalized the message and then we become the bearers of the message. So even the men are impacted. Toxic masculinity. It's not like, I don't believe that, anybody who's inflicting harm is in a great peaceful place of mind themselves. So just wanted to add on to that patriarchy gets everyone. So.
And so Shaila, on that note, go ahead, Rita. We can't hear you, unfortunately. Oh, we still can't hear you.
Yeah, tech challenges. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Sorry, just quickly, there are two questions, and I just wanted to ask Bindu from Narika. So, Narika, does it have more, somebody's asked, Pritika's actually asking if Narika helps girls in India as well as here. Are there, do you have any resources there as well?
We do. So our toll-free number is accessible to anyone in the world. So we have around 25% of our calls coming in from India. Typically what is happening is that there is a connection to the US. There is often an example of this could be transnational abandonment, where the person causing harm might send their spouse back to India and then divorce them or really separate or walk off. And so in those instances, usually when there's a tie back to the US, whether because of the children or someone is here in the US, someone in India might be calling us. And so that happens a lot. So we're still able to provide counseling services through the phone. Of course, there are certain programs where it's harder. There's limitations, like legal is an example. There are limitations of not necessarily being adept in the laws in India, in which case we will usually refer them to someone who is a free attorney in India as much as we can. Whatever resources we have, we're able to share. But there are certain things we're able to do and certain things that are much more local to the Bay Area. So really anybody in the world can still call in, and we welcome anybody to call in.
That's good to hear. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that, Bindu.
And I just have another question for Zakia, actually. So people experiencing domestic violence are increasingly vulnerable to homelessness, especially women and children with limited economic resources. So for example, we saw Gitanjali also facing a dilemma when she talks about the challenges of leaving her daughter in a shelter during the pandemic. So what are some of the ways in which agencies are addressing this challenge?
Thank you, Malavika. This is actually a very important question because housing is one of the major obstacles in the Bay Area for people who are either trying to move on or even people who have very low income. It's always a struggle. Now, for somebody who is trying to escape abuse, there are definitely women's shelters, and shelters are still open. They're accepting new guests. And where in our county, when the shelters are actually full right now because of such an increase in demand, our county has provided us with some additional funds so we can actually put people in motels. We, as an agency, Maitri doesn't have shelter. We have a transitional housing program. And there also we have done one or two intakes during this pandemic, keeping all the safety measures in mind. We all have received free PPE from some state grant, all safety additional, whatever we may need. And I can assure you that all the shelters and agencies that are bound to meet people face to face, we are all taking extreme safety measures for the client and for ourselves. So there is no question about that. But what happens after the transitional house? What happens after the shelter? Now, the Shaila mentioned that there are certain programs that you can go to subsidized housing. There are some rental assistance, and this is available depending on which county you are in. Your county may be offering that. And one good thing about these housing assistance programs are they don't just write you a check for your rent. They actually talk to you about how you can sustain yourself going forward, because they cannot provide you help beyond a certain time, right? It may be 6 months or a year at the most. What happens after that? So they will work with you with your skills, employment options, and anything else that can be relevant. So definitely I would say that if somebody is in a danger, in a very lethal situation, then not thinking about is housing safe for me, because the home is not safe. And there is so much increase in murder suicides, right? So we have to figure out what is the priority. If priority is life, is the threat is that big, then don't think about it. There are options that agencies can offer you.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Zakia just said. If you are, yes, it's difficult, but if you are in a crisis and it's escalating and you're in danger, please call the hotlines. We are moteling people. That's what we're committed to do. Your life is above any other complication that arises. We may need to figure a week later, what are we going to do long term? But your immediate, so Zakia, thank you for saying that.
Thank you. That's very reassuring. And especially because there's also such support for like a long-term plan, a path of self-sustenance. I think this is very good. Thank you.
I will say that we are getting a lot of comments and questions about how best to support others. And I think what Yamini mentions, that this was an eye-opener for her, right? She says, in some cases, it is okay to not jump in right away, right? It might cause more harm to the situation than bring any relief. And there are some specific questions, right? What is the role of a bystander, whether they need to step in or not? I think we've addressed it partially here, but it behooves a much longer conversation. So I would urge our audience members, if any of you have a question, comment, or confused about how best to support your friends or anybody else who you think needs help, then I would urge you to reach out to the agencies that are in the Bay Area or in the area in which you currently reside or have access to. In our panel today, of course, we have Maitri, Save, and Narika. So these are wonderful agencies in the Bay Area who you should absolutely reach out to if you have these questions. So that does bring us to almost to the end of our panel conversation. This was absolutely insightful. I do want to pose a final question, which I think would help our audience, right? So If you could, what would be one thing that you would ask our viewers today to do or keep in mind to help end cycles of violence in our community? And if I may ask Bindu, Zakia, and then Shailaja to go.
Sure. I think one is, you're asking for one, which is so difficult, but I'm like obsessing over that. But I'll start by saying, I think self-reflection, self-examination of how we contribute to the cycle of violence, how we contribute in terms of the power we have in various portions in our life is an important one. I think it comes to the root of, if we look ourselves in the mirror, we ask ourselves important questions about what do we do with the power we have? How do we contribute to, with our silence, to much of the abuse that is happening in the world, whether in our homes or in our communities? That's probably the first thing I'd say. And I'm going to put in one more. I'm setting a precedent. But the second I would be is get educated and support local nonprofits, local domestic violence nonprofits, whether it is attending an event like this, whether it's volunteering, whether it's making an in-kind donation, a financial donation, whatever it is. There's a place for you in the movement, whoever you are, whatever age you are, whatever gender you are, whatever your affiliations are, there's a place for you. And it takes all of us. It's not an issue that started yesterday. It's not an issue that's going to end tomorrow. It requires chipping away at every instance, at every aspect, at every bend of the road. So I urge all of you to be a part of the movement with us. You can contribute with your expertise, you can contribute with your money, with your voice, with your influence, whatever it is. There's a place for you in the movement. And I'd urge you to speak up, talk to us, figure out your place in the movement, and we'll be in a better, we'll have a better world and a happier and a more joyous world as a result of that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bindu.
Thank you, Bindu. You mentioned my number 1 and 2. I appreciate that. So I can move on to the number 3 that I had in mind, which is, election is coming up. Make sure you pick your leaders and at every level, your city council, your state and the federal level, and vote for people who are trying to create a society where justice will be available for everybody, which is an equitable society for all, because poverty, like we already said, homelessness, and even how much is per hourly, the lowest pay, right? $15 per hour. These all affect survivors in more ways than you can think, right? It all affects us, but it affects them more than some of us. So definitely when you are voting, please look at the policies these people are supporting and how we can actually create a better community for all of us.
That's great. Thank you, Zakia.
I'm really glad I get to go last, because now I can build on what everybody else is saying. So I also have 2 things to say, and I'll say it fast because I know we're probably running over time. One, please stop treating it as an issue that belongs inside the house to a family. It is not a family's dysfunction. It is not something to be sorted out by the couple. Please treat the issue as something that needs community organizing, community education, community efforts. So it's not that 2 people just one day got up and decided that I will be, open to abuse and I'm going to be abusive. It is a learned behavior. It is a systems issue. It's a product of everything we are all doing every day in our community. So take accountability. I will actually, in fact, I always say join the movement, but I'm going to say you are the movement. We are only putting the Band-Aid. Each of us is the movement. That is what I really, really want to say. And second, I'm going to say, when you know that something is going wrong, or if you feel somebody is going through a difficult time, please know that your friendship, especially during the pandemic, could be the one ray of light. Really, friends and families can reach where hotlines may not be able to reach right now. So please be open, educate yourself, show up. Your kindness, it may feel like you're doing nothing when you're listening to somebody, you're doing nothing when you're just showing up every day to make sure they're okay. But that can be the one ray of light that can help somebody get through a dark time and to a point where perhaps when services are open or they're able to access something, or they're in a place where they feel like processing what is going on. So do not underestimate the power of you as an advocate for someone. keeping in mind that whatever they want to do is what you want to follow. You don't want to force them to do it, but just be there. Your friendship can mean the world. So
absolutely. Thank you so much, Shailaja. And I do want to also point out that Sabrina Farrell from the Family Justice Center just sent us a note saying, that the Family Justice Center is open for survivors as well. There is a number, and we'll make sure to include it as part of our kind of social media post as well. Anybody can walk in 8 to 5 p.m. and can call for services 24/7. The number is 510-267-8800. So thank you so much, Bindu, Shailaja, and Zakia, for the impactful work that you and your agencies do and for participating in the conversation today. Thanks to our lovely audience for joining us today, and we appreciate you participating in such an important topic. We hope you found today's presentation engaging and insightful as much as I did, and I'm sure Rita and Malvika will join me as well as I say that. I thank you once again and have a pleasant evening.
thank you. Thank you to Deepthi for organizing this, the conceptualization of it. I forgot to say that, but thank you so much for having us today.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. And yes.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.